If you are on the trek from solopreneur to CEO, you already know some of the challenges that go along with that journey. And today I'm talking with Shannon Mattern from shannonmattern.com. She is a powerhouse woman who has really, really defined herself as a CEO. And as she's grown her company, which, by the way, teaches women how to create and grow their own web design businesses, she's really zeroed in on what does it mean to be a CEO? How do I get into that CEO mindset? How do I hire employees with the right vision and foundation of my company? And she goes full transparent on this episode on what it means to elevate yourself to CEO. Sometimes it's nice to hear from somebody who's in the thick of it, just like you. And that's what this episode is. I know you're going to enjoy it. Shannon, I am so excited to be talking with you today. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Me too. We were chatting ahead of time. We're like, ooh, this is going to be good. Let's really dive in. So today we're diving into your story, specifically how you have made the transition from solopreneur to CEO. And you started out actually doing freelance website design. So I would love to just start out with your story, kind of your origin story. How did you get started in this online space for anybody who is new to you? Let's just start at the very beginning.
Oh, yeah. So it was like 2014. I had been working at my corporate, but that specific corporate job that I was at for about, I want to say 7 years at that point. And I was just like, I was drained. I was depressed. I was like, I can't believe this is why I went to college and like did all the things I thought we were supposed to do to get the career and the job and the house and all of the things. And then I'm like, is this it? Like, is this what every day of my life is going to be like? I can't, like, this can't be it. This cannot be it. And so I had like a kind of a mini panic attack in my office one day. And I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I have got to do something. I want freedom. I want flexibility. I want financial independence. And I really felt like the only way I was going to create that was to be my own boss. So I started to take one skill that I knew other people might be interested in, and I started doing some freelance web design on the side. And it came out of like a vendor at my day job saying, "Hey, who built your website for your company?" And I was like, "Oh, I did." And he goes, "Do you do any work on the side?" And I was like, this is the ticket out of here. Right?
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. So I was like, yes, I do. And I was like, well, how much do I charge? I guess I'll just charge how much I make an hour at my day job, like not even thinking about any other possibility. And so I started to do some freelance web design work on the side. So I quickly figured out that I was way undercharging. You know, there was not enough hours in the day to run a web design business. Not all that time's billable, just so many things. I was undercharging, over delivering, completely burnt out. But my clients loved me because I jumped when they said jump, and I was so good at what I did. And I had this employee mentality that I took to working for my clients. Like, they were all bosses. So they would refer to me, and I had all of these clients, and I had my day job. It was just a hot mess. And I was like, this does not feel like the freedom that I wanted to create. It actually feels worse. My day job was easier. I'm just going to like pack it all in and just go back and be an employee for the rest of my life. And then I was listening to a podcast one day with Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income. It was him and Chalene Johnson on her like Marketing Impact Academy podcast from way back in the day.
Good combo.
Yes. And he was talking to her about how he earns affiliate commissions by teaching people how to set up their blog. And I was like, what? And he went on to say he earned affiliate commissions through Bluehost. When people would sign up for Bluehost through his link after he did a tutorial showing them how to set things up, and he would earn money from Bluehost. And I was like, it was like one of those like record scratch moments. I was like, wait a minute. You mean every single tutorial that I've ever followed to figure out how to build websites and how to do this, and all these products and services that I've bought through these links where these people out of the goodness of their heart have shown me how to set this thing up, you mean they're making money off of this? I'm like, it all makes sense now why there are so many free tutorials out there, A.
Right.
And B, I can do this too. And so I was like, this is it. It's not working one-on-one with clients. It is teaching people how to build their own website for free. So I made like the best tutorial in the world, I thought. I was like, I'm going to take Pat Flynn's and do one better. But I really he was targeting towards niche blog sites, and I was really targeting towards female service-based entrepreneurs, like who the Chalene Johnsons were teaching and all of that. I'm like, oh, I know what they need. They need a website with an email list and like all of this stuff. And so I developed my free 5-day website challenge training to teach people like me who wanted the freedom, flexibility, and financial independence, but didn't have the tech skills to set up their online business. And then I promptly went into figuring out how to market that, get people to sign up for it. Like I started making affiliate commissions, and then I'm like, ooh, I can launch a course off of this. And like kind of that whole path of going from service provider to like packaging that up, selling that as like a digital product.
So is that around the same time that you quit your job then? Because you went full-time eventually, right?
I did go full-time eventually. So I completely quit one-on-one web design clients, went all in on courses and products. And as you know, like you need a bigger audience for lower priced products to be able to sell them. And so it's like hustling to build my audience. Every course under the sun, every strategy under the sun, like webinars. I was like, squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. Like something's going to 10x my traffic and, revenue explosion overnight, just like you see in the online space, which may not necessarily be accurate, truthful. I came across someone who was a business coach who was like, oh, hey, will you do my website for me? I love your free challenge, but I don't want to do it. And I was like, no. She's like, why not? I will pay you. And I'm like, because it's not worth it to me. And she's like, you're not charging enough. I am a business coach. Please build my website and let me help you like get some boundaries in place, fix your pricing mindset, like all of this stuff. And I was like, oh, I can charge a lot more for websites than I was. And this combined with my courses and affiliates, I was able to replace my day job income and quit my day job. So that was like a 3-year journey of really like owning my value and figuring out the pricing and like getting systems and processes and holding boundaries and all of the things that we need to kind of grow into as going from like employee to entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
I
feel like that's
journey.
The first shift. That's the first one.
The
it's
first
like,
shift. Yeah.
Okay. And it's so interesting. Our stories overlap so much because I totally did the same thing. Like I was service provider. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to launch courses. And I did you ditch like all of your clients when you decided to do that? Or did you keep some?
Yeah. No.
Yeah. You're like, nope, I'm done. And I did the same thing. So I let go of all my clients and then I like launched these courses and I didn't have a big audience. So of course I made like $97 off of like my 6 months of creating courses. I'm like, oh crud. So then I had to go back to freelancing and then building at the same time. So I always tell people like if you're doing service provider work and you want to add passive income or course creation income
scalable
or whatever,
revenue.
like right. While something that takes an audience, like do it at the same time. Don't just quit and pivot. Don't just throw away what you've done. Like the transition time will come. So it's just really interesting that we have that similarity. So what would you say that transition point? So we have kind of the leading up to going full time. So now you are, all right, I did it. I freaking quit my job. Yes, I'm here. Talk to me about that season and some of the challenges kind of in that growing season. Was that once that happened, was it like a faster growing season? Was it slow and steady? What did that look like for you?
So for me, my goal was while I'm at my day job, before I quit, I need to hit my minimum baseline revenue, which I'll talk about that in a second, to for 2 months, not just 1 month, 2 months. Like it can't be a fluke. It has to be repeatable. And for me, that was like twice my take home pay. So I was
Okay.
taking home 5,000 a month. I wanted my business to hit 10,000 in a month twice. I could feel comfortable leaving behind that paycheck. And before my husband would be like cool with me leaving behind that
Yeah.
paycheck. So once I quit, I felt like all this freedom. I'm like, oh, if I could do what I did while I was still working a full-time job, imagine what I'll be able to do now that I have all this time. And that's kind of when like the fear set in for me.
Mm.
And I went like just crazy on strategies and courses. And like I felt this, if I was a squirrel before, I was like a squirrel on a mission, like in that first those first 6 months after leaving, because I did not realize like how much pressure I would feel and put on myself to like really maintain that level. So I like went all in on like a webinar funnel and a new course and launching a membership. And then when that membership didn't like make me hundreds of, not hundreds, but tens of thousands of dollars, like in the first launch, I'm like, scrap it, throw it away, change the
Mm.
name, rebrand it, launch it as something else. So I kind of went through that phase, and thank goodness for one-on-one clients and my free training and affiliate commissions, because that was like working in the background for me and continuing to bring me money, where all the stuff I was spending my time on and spending money on and trying like was not working. And I was so
Mm.
obsessed about trying to make it work that I was completely like discounting what was actually bringing me revenue
Mm.
in my business. And so that was really like an interesting thing to reflect back on, where I was just like, oh, I was not even like looking at scaling what was working. My ego had me hooked in on making something work that wasn't working.
So your course revenue did eventually take off though. So do you feel like there was a like looking back, if you were to do that grow season differently, or if you were to give someone
Mm-hmm.
advice maybe, because I sometimes I ask that question where it's like, what would you do differently? And it's like, well, maybe I wouldn't do anything differently because I learned, and we all learn from
Sure.
our mistakes. But if you were to give someone advice in that same season, like, do you think that it was beneficial to like rapid fire test, try new things, like test, nope, doesn't work, test, doesn't work, let me try a course, let me do this? Do you feel like there was some benefit to that? Or is it, hey, I wish I would have just done this, or maybe a combo of both? Or was there something that really like, oh, okay, aha moment, this is what I just need to zero in on? And if so, what got you to that moment?
Yeah. So another thing that kind of rose to the top during that time was other web designers coming to me and saying, how are you doing this? How are you
Mm.
getting these clients? How are you marketing your business? How are you making affiliate commissions? And this was before I quit my day job. I was like, okay, well, I'll show you. I'll just start. I called it the group coaching program. And I priced it like for what to me felt like an insane amount of money, $600 for a year-long membership in this program. Like, I'm going to bankrupt people with that price. And that also was growing. And it was so easy. And people were just like joining it. And I would do a webinar every so often, and like a bunch of people would join it. And I guess it just felt too easy. I don't know, because that was the course that was like just bringing in consistent revenue that was easy to sell. The free 5-day website challenge, all the affiliate commissions off the back end, super easy to promote and sell, one-on-one services. The course I was trying to make work was a course about like marketing. It was
Mm.
how to market your, like all the marketing I done to make the 5-day challenge a success, and marketing tech. Like, I'm going to teach you how to like do the marketing piece. Well, nobody, like, that was such a hard sell, but that was, I'm like, everybody needs this. This is where it's at. This is, so if I could go back in time, I would pay attention to what people were telling me and not what I thought that they needed, because I
So
pivoted and tested and changed, and but like nobody ever said, hey, we want you to teach us this next, Shannon.
yeah. Oh my gosh, that's totally, again, such similar. I love, the more we get to know each other, because we've chatted about our stories in the past, but the more we get to know each other, I'm like, man, we really did go down such a similar path. And I it makes me wonder if like, oh, maybe this is just the path that does everyone go down this path, because I did the same thing. So those courses I created in the very beginning, it was like, here they are. And it was nothing, like no interest. And they were about everything. I mean, I'm pretty sure I called one like Passion to Profit, which I found
Sure.
out is trademarked, and I got my first, like
Cease
cease
and
and desist
desist.
letter because I didn't realize, oh, I should check trademark, like the things that you just don't know in the beginning, right? And I was trying to teach like kind of marketing and the things that I had learned and be one of the guru people. And then
Hmm.
none of it sold. And at that point, I had a list of like 1,000 people about that I had worked 2 years to get. I mean, I spent 2 grueling years getting a list of 1,000 people. And I finally just said, what do you guys want to learn from me? We want to learn how to start a virtual assistant business, like over and over and over. I'm like, oh, well, that's what I'll teach then, right? Like, that's easy. I didn't know. And it's so funny when you just actually ask your audience and listen to them. Like, they'll tell you what they want. They'll tell you what they will buy from you. And it
Yeah.
sounds like that's exactly what you did.
Yeah. And it wasn't even like me asking them what they wanted. It was like them telling me. And I was so like bogged down in trying to just make this thing work, and out of fear of like, now this is it. This is my only income. This has to work. I have to make this work. Like, and just, I don't know. I just want to go back and coach that version of me to be like, hey, you have it figured out. Just stop this, focus here. It's all good.
Yep. But again, you look back and then it's like, well, would I be where I am now without learning those lessons? And now it's like, okay, now that's in the book. The skill of learning to ask my audience is in the book. And then learning to like trust myself in the book, and I think it does. I think it develops you as a business owner. So
For sure.
I think it is interesting though that it's so similar. And I'm sure there's people listening that are like, I'm in that phase, And so now we can pass on that advice to other people, right?
Yes, for sure. It makes me a better coach. It makes me a better, better teacher. So I'm glad I went through it, but I could have avoided that pain.
So what would you say then, transitioning, let's talk like phase
Hmm.
3, transitioning from solopreneur, cuz okay, I guess I should ask, were you a team of one still at this point, or had you hired contractors or employees or anything? Like at this point, what does your business look like, and what transitions you to solopreneur to CEO?
Yeah, so I had hired a virtual assistant via an agency while I was still side hustling, and I continued having someone to help me with things all along the way. I almost always had someone on the team. The interesting thing about it in hindsight is that I was paying people to do things that I really didn't need doing in my business because I was still chasing shiny objects. I'm like, we need to have a Pinterest strategy and an Instagram and a this and a that, but I didn't have a proven offer that converted yet. So while I am paying for all of this help and everybody was amazing, I wasn't getting a return on my investment for those things. And so it's like I was just buying time, buying time. I was just cloning myself, to do things that like I didn't need to be doing.
Mhm.
So it was awesome. Like that version of me, I was like, this is amazing to have this help. It's great. It's not all on me. I can practice like outsourcing and delegating. But if I could go back, I would not do that until I knew like that the money that I was going to be spending was going to make me more money.
Mm,
And that was that phase of my business of like, being burnt out, needing help, hiring help, getting great help, but not strategic help because I was just throwing everything against the wall,
yeah.
and certain things were sticking and certain things weren't. And then it got to the point where I'm like, I can't afford to keep paying people anymore. And that sucked. That was so hard. And I had to like end contracts with some really great people and recalibrate and figure out like what my next move was going to be, because I have always like I pay myself first, because I always paid myself first, paid my expenses and all of those things, and it's like I'm going to pay me before I'm going to pay you. I'm sorry, like this,
Oh,
this
good.
is going to have
Yay.
to end. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that's interesting too, because I was actually speaking just at a little local networking event the other day. And I said something very similar to what you just said about like, I'm chasing these shiny objects and it's not working. And I remember a season in business. This is what I told them at the networking event. I remember a season in business where I could see the next step. Like I could see the next place I wanted to be in business. And I was so convinced that it was something out like external that was going to get me there.
Yes.
Like I was so convinced that, oh, I just have to find the right Facebook ads person, or I've just got to bring in the right person to build a good funnel for me. And like your next level of success is, I mean, and someone could prove me wrong, but for me, it's never been like, I brought in this person and then everything changed, right? Like I, any like huge patterns of growth have been from like, hey, I had actually this good, like I already proved that something was working. And then I brought somebody in that amplified the thing that was working. Like I feel like sometimes we think that I'm gonna like a person is going to just like come in and save the day and be that silver bullet or whatever. And I just have never found that in my experience to be true. And I've hired amazing people, don't get me wrong, but it's never been like, oh, and then you saved everything, right? It's like, no, this person came in and built upon the foundation that was already there or the strategy that was already there. And that's what made it like go from a small fire to pouring gasoline on it. It's yeah, you got to hire like the gasoline, not the match, right?
Ooh, that is so, so good. And yes, that has been my experience too. And I think the same thing could be said about like, no website's going to come in and fix your business. Like if you're like, oh, I just need to rebrand and rename that thing,
Oh my gosh.
redesign my website and update this. It's like, no, that's none
Nope.
of that is what you need to do.
Oh, so
Coming
good.
from a
Okay,
web
so
designer, none of that is what you need to do.
which is awesome for you to say too. You know, it's like, I'm going to be honest with you. You need a good website, but it's not going to come in and save everything. It's going to amplify the awesomeness that you are, but it's not
Yes.
going to like, oh, I have this new website and now suddenly I went from 6 figures to 10 figures, you know, like
That is not
just
how
doesn't
that
work that
works.
way. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So what would you say to somebody who is, you know, going through this phase, like solopreneur to CEO? And maybe actually, let me ask this first. Like, what does being CEO of your business mean to you? Like, what is that title? And maybe it's changed over time, so you can talk about that. But like, what does it mean to be CEO?
That is such a good question. I think for me, the meaning has shifted. Like when I was newer, I was like, oh, I'm a freelancer. I'm this, I own this business. Like I really did not own that version of me or who I was in the business. And I think for me, the first thing was like really stepping into like, this is mine. Like I made this. I own this. This business is a revenue generating asset for me. Like I am not the business anymore. It's like I am the boss of this business, I guess is like the thing. So it was kind of like this separation of me being the business to me running the business. And that shift is like, I don't make things that don't work out mean something about me as a person, right?
Mm,
I don't make it mean that like I'm a failure or I'm not cut out for this or whatever. That shift was like, I'm going to look at this strategically and analytically and go, and do what somebody who is in charge of this asset and its health and its wellness would do and separate out my feelings or my worth or whatever from this thing. And so it was kind of like a disentanglement of me in the business. I think that was really the first thing that had happened for me to really step into that.
whew, that is good stuff because I feel like some of us do that without even realizing that's what we're doing. Like you become proud of this thing that you built, right? And you can take ownership of like, I built this amazing thing and I can own up to maybe some of the problems or issues that it has, but like I am not the problem or I am not the mistake or whatever when some of that happens. Oh, that is so good. So
Yeah,
good.
that was a big shift. And then the other thing was that, like, now I get to bring other people in to help me. Like, I think it was the book, The E Myth, if I'm thinking of the right book, where even if you're the only person in the company, you still design roles within the company. So there's marketing, there's administration, there's executive, there's accounting, like all of these things. And so I like designed all these different roles, even though I was all of them, IT, everything. And it was really like, okay, now that I know what generates revenue in this business, and I have a proven offer that converts. Now it's time to like put some people in place, I have virtual assistants, different contractors, different things like that. Put some people in place to take on some of these and start really shifting into leading those people, right? So I developed the strategy, and now it's like, I'm not abdicating my responsibility to you for like, oh, I hired you and now you go do the thing and we never talk again. And like, that's it. It was like me stepping into a leadership role where I'm like, here's my expectations. Here's this. Here's what I want. Here are the boundaries, like all of these things. And then being willing to coach my contractors when the outcomes weren't like things didn't meet expectations or communication wasn't clear or anything like that. And I think it was like taking full responsibility for all of it. Like, if something didn't happen the way that I thought it should, it is my full responsibility to clarify and give you everything that you need to fix it, instead of just being like, well, I guess you're not good at your job. Like, it's your fault. Like, bye. That's the next level of leadership, I think, is like, was that piece for me. And that was like CEO level stuff.
Right? So what does business look like for you now? Like, what do you spend your time doing? Like, I call them sometimes like my swim lanes. Like, these are like the big three things that I focus on. Or what does it look like on just a really practical basis for you to like show up to work now that you do have people helping you, right? And I mean, you can share if you're comfortable, like what your team looks like as well, if you want.
Yeah, so I have transitioned from, I still have some contractors in roles like graphic design and things that aren't like long-term contracts, but I have full-time employees now, which is a whole another level and a whole different shift from having just a full team of independent contractors to a blend of full-time employees and contractors. And so my days look like now are like so close to like, that ideal day exercise that we all do at some point in business, where my lanes are making sure my ops manager has everything that she needs to like do her job. So she's doing all of the stuff that like me and other contractors combined used to do. And that's her role. And she's full time in that. It looks like developing curriculum and teaching students inside of our web designer academy and our like 5-day website challenge. Like, I don't even really do that anymore. We're about to potentially update it. CEO decisions on the table. Like, what's going to happen, right? I make CEO decisions on what we continue to do and don't continue to do in the company, and hiring and finance and all of that stuff. And then I get to do like marketing, fun stuff like this, like marketing content, like collaborations, podcast interviews, just talking about all the stuff that I love to talk about. And I'm like, that's where I love to be. And like, I even have someone like in my program giving like really specific feedback and coaching, and I get to do like the high level stuff. And it's just like, now I feel like I am experiencing the freedom that I was trying to create back when I was sitting at my desk 7 years ago, saying this can't be it. And now I'm like, this is it. This is it.
I think sometimes people don't realize that it can take that long too. Cause that's totally, I'm like, yes, I want like the freedom and the all the things. Like, I want to be CEO. And I'm like, and freaking 6 years later I am, but it's so worth it. Like, I wouldn't change it for the world. I think it's really interesting. That person you mentioned was an ops manager, I think you said. And it was actually going to be one of my questions was if you had an integrator, and at what point of your business did you bring in your integrator?
Yeah, so I had someone who was incredible before hiring my full-time employee, and she was a contractor. She had other clients, and I needed more from her, and she didn't want to be an employee. And so that was like one of the, and I totally get it. Like, I totally get that there are some people that are like, no, I see a bigger vision for my business than what I'm doing for you today. And that's not the right path for me. And that was Bree, who was that person. I brought her in February of 2021, 2020, or those years kind of like all blend together. I know, right? 2020, 2021, same year.
Same thing.
So I brought her in, And then when it became clear that I'm like, I really need somebody like full time who's working exclusively for me, that decision was made in like December of this past year of 2021. And then I brought on my full time ops coordinator in March, and it's been 6 weeks. And I'm like, where have you been all my life? There is such a difference between, working with contractors and working with full-time employees. And I think they both have a place in the business and they both have a place in the timeline of the business. But I got to a point where I was like, I can't be as nimble as I want or need to be when I'm on someone else's timeline. And I was like, I want the kind of person who has run their own business and has decided, you know what, that's not for me, but I want to work in this type of an environment. And that's what I found.
Mm. So when it comes to hiring, any tips? I'm going off the questions I sent you.
Yeah.
I really love this question too. And just knowing that you are, in charge of hiring, that you're working on, or that you are
Yep.
hiring full-time employees now. What does it look like for you to hire somebody, and what do you look for in a person that you're going to hire as a full-time team member?
It was a huge shift for me to decide that I wanted to have an employees and have a company with employees, because I was so scarred by corporate that I did not want to recreate that type of environment for anybody coming for me to be their quote unquote boss. So there was a lot of reflection and introspection and thinking about like, what do I want this business to look like, and what are my values, and how do I want to run this business in a way that's like mutually beneficial for both of us. Like if I wanted freedom, flexibility, and financial independence, like that's what I want my employees to feel like working with me. So it took me a long time to go from I know I need to hire to actually doing it. So it was probably like a year of contemplation before even like starting the hiring process of like, I know I need to hire someone. And then like actually doing it. I outsourced the hiring process. And part of the reason for that was I had been talking about it and I knew it was going to be a big project. And I know myself, and I'd be like, I really like this person. I really like this person, and I think I'd like working with them. I'm going to hire them, and then I'll teach them everything. And that is not what needed to happen. And then I just knew that I would not pick the right person if I did that. So I hired a company to help me craft a job description and like help me get really clear on my values and who I wanted, and post the job and vet the applicants and do initial interviews and go through all that process and bring me like the final candidates. And then I hired a company to help me with like HR and like policies that felt good to me and not punitive, and all of the things that like are intimidating about hiring. I outsourced those. I hired contractors to help me hire full time. And best decision, because I know throughout that process all of the mistakes I would have made that they headed me off from making by having this sounding board of people to go through. So I did not take that process lightly. I felt like I was entering into like marriage, right? Even though I know that like it's at will employment, they can leave anytime, I can fire them anytime. I wanted to make sure that like I was making a full commitment to this role in my business to the right person. And also financially, I wanted to make sure I had enough runway to pay them like for a long time before I hired as well. Pay myself, pay expenses, pay them, and looking at the picture of like, yep, I can pay them for 6 months and I know we've got more revenue coming in. Just how I manage my finances, making sure that like I was financially able, and not just like, oh, well, I'm hiring them in advance of this launch and hopefully that launch works out so I can pay them. Like, no, like I can pay you.
So good. Yeah. My hiring is done mostly by my COO. And it's funny because when I hired her, she was a contractor as well. She was an online business manager, OBM, and she was so good. So good. I mean, she's COO of both of my companies now. And I literally told her, I was like, if you can figure out how to hire yourself as a full-time employee, then I will hire you as a full-time employee. And so she figured it all out, like how to set up the taxes and social. I think we use Gusto, and she set it all up. Yeah, to work. And I'm like, okay, cool, you're hired. So I agree, man. If that is not your strong suit, then get other people to do it, which is part of, CEO as well, is recognizing your strengths,
Yes.
recognizing the things that aren't your strengths and just living in those strengths, right?
Well, yeah, and sometimes recognizing that some things that are your strengths aren't the way your time is best spent. And especially
Yeah,
for people like me who are like techie and I like to do market, like there's all the things that as a solopreneur, you figure out how to do, especially if you're a techie and you're bootstrapping. And then it's like, oh, I can do these things and I like doing these things, but these things continuing this holding me back from the bigger vision and letting go of the things that like I could tinker around on a website for days, like no longer the best use of my time.
for sure. Okay, so one more question. What is ahead? What do you see looking forward as kind of the next challenge or the next phase in growing or maintaining whatever, wherever you see your business at the next phase? What kind of challenges are you looking up ahead at?
Where I'm really at right now is like this crossroads of where I started with serving the DIYer and teaching the entrepreneur, the solopreneur, how to build their website and like, set up all of their online business tech, and like coaching the web designer to build their individual business, package, price, position, and sell web design projects. And so these are these CEO decisions that like I'm really going through right now as we're talking, is like, I know what side of my business is the most lucrative and makes the most money and is like speaks to my heart because I've been through the whole process end to end and where I can have a huge impact. And that is with the Web Designer Academy and teaching web designers, how to package, price, position, and sell their projects. But then there's this other part of me where it's like giving away the free 5-day website challenge has been such a beautiful thing. I've heard so many success stories from people who are like, I signed up for your free training and I went on to build a multiple 6 and 7 figure business off of you just teaching me this one piece of the puzzle of how to like get this set up. And it blows my mind. And it's like to take that off the internet because it needs updated in different things just like feels like, ugh. But at the same time, it's like next level CEO decisions, right? So I'm in the midst of that. That's the challenge of like, what is the future of this company? Who do we serve? What is our product suite? What does that look like? And that's one piece of it. And then like making sure we're hiring sustainably for growth, because I have started to replace a lot of the things that I do with full-time team members. And I see like, oh, I'm still handling this piece. Like I'm still handling all the sales piece. And now it's like, okay, bringing in the right person who I trust, who has integrity to take over part of the sales for Web Designer Academy. And so 2022 really feels like it's not a growth year as much as it is like, how can we maintain exactly what we did last year, shore up some things so that we can just, grow at the end of this year or into next year. Long answer to a short
No.
question, but yeah.
Good. I love it because I feel like that's at least from my experience and the people that I've spoken with, I feel like it's a very natural kind of toggle. I feel like
Yeah.
you go back and forth between seasons of growth and seasons of infrastructure, right? Like, okay,
Yes.
it's growth, 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 growth. All right. Now let's make sure we have the infrastructure to sustain future growth. All right. That could be foundational core mission values. Like who is the audience we're serving? Really getting back to that foundational stuff. It's the
Yep.
systems, it's the hiring the right people. All right. Now we're back into growth mode again. And I know, at least in my experience, we kind of have years where we toggle. Not that you're never growing during infrastructure, not that you're not putting
Sure.
in any infrastructure in during growth phases, but there is kind of all right, this is more an infrastructure year, this is more a growth year. We've been really, really heavy on growth for like 2 years, and same, we're in an infrastructure this year as well. So it feels strange sometimes because it's like, oh, okay, we've been so growth minded that it almost feels wrong, but it's like, nope, this is exactly where we're supposed to be. So camaraderie there. I feel the exact same way. Well, this has been honestly so amazing. Thank you. I appreciate your vulnerability, you just letting us dive into not just the high points, but the low points and what it really means to be CEO and to make that transition over time. It's been such a good discussion. So thank you so much. Where can our listeners find out more about you?
Yeah, you guys, if you're web designers, you can go to webdesigneracademy.com and check out all of our free stuff there. If you are a entrepreneur, DIYer, shannonmattern.com, find all of our stuff for you guys over there.
Awesome. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.